Hello guys, welcome back to the channel DevOps Consultancy and Solution. In this video, I will show you how to add provisioner in Packer build file for Azure. So let's get started. So first question, if I ask you, what are provisioners in Packer? So provisioners are basically used to install your custom scripts or the packages on top of the base image. So let's go back to the Visual Studio. So I will create the file Azure Ubuntu Apache 2.packer.scl file. So just created. I will open the file. So first step is basically to create the Packer block. So Packer block is basically, as I said earlier, to provide the required plugins. So just mention the plugin. So next is the source block. So I will use the same source block which I used earlier. It is exactly the same, you can see. So in the last, I will use the build block. So in the build block, we will mention what are the provisioners we need to install. So if I just copy and paste here the build block. So this is a build block. First it is the source. So which source it need to be used as a base image. So in this example, I'm using the two provisioners. So first provisioner is installing the Docker. So it will install the Docker on the Ubuntu image. And second is the install the Apache. So I'm installing the Apache and start it, the Apache service, right? Similarly, I'm installing the Docker and start the Docker service. So these are the commands which are available, which I'm using. So these scripts I will upload on the GitHub repository. So you can use the GitHub repository to download the file and verify. So it is a pretty simple commands you to install the Docker. So you must know, most of the guys you know, but if you don't know, you can just note down or just check out the GitHub repository, right? So these are the two provisioner which I am using. In this example, I will also show you how to use the variables. So in the AWS series examples, I have shown you in a separate session how to use the variable. But in the same example, I will show you how to use the variables. So basically, there are two types of variables in the Packer. One is the input variable, and second is the local variable. So input variables are the variables which we can use and provide the value from by the inside the file using the default value, or we can pass the value as an input variable to the Packer file while executing. So we can use the variables like this, the variable, and there are second is the locals. So locals variable are basically the variables which we cannot, these are static value which we cannot pass as an input variables, and its value will remain uh, static or the up to the this file only, right? So I'm using the two variables. So in this example, so first is the variable is the which I'm using is the resource group. So I am using the resource group. I just give the default value as the packer-rg. So how to use the variable in the source. So where is the packer? So this is the resource group name. So I will replace it with the dollar curly brace and var dot the name of the variable. So in this way, the packer will replace this variable with the its default value. So I am using the default value here, the packer-rg. But you can also pass this variable as the input value or the input parameter, but while executing the build file. So if I'm not using the default value here, so if I'm not using the default value, I just comment it out. So I can pass the variable resource group value by executing the build file. So I just comment it out and show you how to run the file and how to pass the variable. So second is the local variable. So local, I'm using the timestamp. So I will use a timestamp in the name of the image. So I will use here name curly braces dollar sign, sorry. So it will be local dot timestamp, right? So now I added the two variables in the Packer file and the two provisioners. So these are the provisioners which I mentioned. So let's run the file. So first step is Packer initialize. So I will just use the command. So initialization is done. So next step is Packer validate. So I will give Packer space validate and the file name az underscore ubuntu hyphen apache 2 dot packer dot scl. So it is saying unset variable. So the value of the resource group, it is saying it is not set yet. So okay, to fix this error, so I will give validate Packer validate and pass the variable. So the name is resource group equals Packer hyphen what is the name hyphen rg and then the file name. Now the validation is done properly. So either and pass the so this is the way we can pass the input variable while executing the command, but I can also use the variable file. So how to you create the Packer variable file and how to use it. So you can check our AWS video where we use the where we create the AWS images for the Ubuntu or the Windows using the Packer file. So if you go here, in this examples I have used the Packer variable files. The Packer file should have format like this, and it can be used in the as a variable input file while executing. So you can use it. So in this Azure's while creating the Azure AMI, so I will use the variable as the input. So now the validation is done. So I can run the command packer build, then again the pass the input variable. Yeah, I will pass the input variable resource group packer g. So if you see here in the file, so it is commented, so there is no default value I have mentioned. So it will create the image under this resource group. So if I enter here, now the build process has been started. So it will take little bit time. So I will pause the video and come back once it is done. Yes guys, now the image has been created. So now you can see here the image which has been created. It has the name DevOps CNS underscore Packer underscore image and the timestamp. So timestamp is the variable that we have mentioned here in the name of the image which it will create. So it has been created. So we will go to the Azure portal and verify it whether the image has been created. So if I refresh it, so now I can see the new image. They are which has two provisioner, Docker and Apache. That image has been created here. So this is our golden image which we can use for further to create the VM. So it can help us when we are creating the virtual machine skill set or in the Kubernetes when we are using the Kubernetes and we have to create the virtual VMSs to launch the instance at runtime. So that instance can use this kind of images which is the golden images to launch. So we don't require and need to install any custom package on top of it. It has all the packages pre-installed on it. So we can click on the create VM and launch the instance and verify. So I'm not just going in detail for this part, otherwise the video will be too long, but you can create the VM and verify that the Docker and the Apache is up and running, right? So we will end up this session here, and in the next session I will show you how to create the Windows images. So for the Azure, so in the same, so I will create first the default Windows image and then add the provisioner in top of it. So please guys, stay tuned and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Keep learning, happy learning. Thank you.